We're going to stay on the financial side just for one more question here. We're going to focus on the deficit. The federal deficit is projected to be $985 billion in fiscal year 2019. The national debt is above $21 trillion. I'm not sure what that number is. What should be done to address it, or does it matter? And it'll be George followed by Scott.
Well, it absolutely does matter, and we must address it. And certainly one of the ways to address that is through economic growth. We've had an economy that's been growing since 2008, and so that's certainly part of the solution. But this is an incredibly complex issue. If it was easy to solve, it would have been solved a long time ago. But it's one of these issues that requires bipartisan solutions. We need leaders in Congress who are willing to sit down and work with folks across the aisle and not be obstructionists. And so one of the things that I get tired of is folks who are constantly railing against deficits when there's a Democratic administration, and then who will turn around as soon as there's a Republican administration and vote for a tax cut that adds $1.5 trillion to the national debt. You can't have it both ways. All right? So what we have to do is we have to sit down and stop kicking this down the road, stop trying to leave a huge mess for our children and grandchildren. And I think to create a long-term solution, we're going to have to get folks from both sides of the aisle to sit down and describe what is the end state that we want here, and what are the courses of action that we can pursue to go after it. That's the way that it works in the military, that's the way it works in the private sector, that's the way it works in the federal government, at least the pieces that I've served in, and that's what we need to do as we go forward as a nation. The Freedom Caucus has been obstructionist on this issue, and it's time for them to step aside and to allow a bipartisan approach to taking on national debt.
This has been one of the bellwether issues that I ran on and that I fought about since I was elected to Congress, and quite honestly when I was at the State House too, as well. We make this much too complicated, folks. This is pretty simple, right? You don't spend more than you take in. That's as easy, that's as hard as it gets, right? And somebody has to make hard decisions, and you elect members of Congress to do that. Now, as far as being obstructionist, the Freedom Caucus are the people that are actually trying to save the money, right? I just voted against the spending package. We have a 4.4% economy right now, 4.4, right? Which didn't happen in the 8 years of President Obama. Didn't get really above 2, but we have it now in these 2 years, and it continues. That's one of the answers to solving the debt crisis, because even though we provided a tax cut to every single person in the room, federal revenues are actually up. The federal government is taking in more money because more people are working. The economy is expanding, the economy is growing, there's more opportunity. What didn't happen is spending reductions. You don't reduce the deficit by taxing people more, right? Taking more of their hard-earned money and making a disincentive to make more money and put your capital and put your money at risk. You save money by not spending as much. The bill that I just voted against to cut spending, it spent $8 billion more this year for legislative branch. If you're not willing to cut the ledge branch and some of the other sundry things, you're not willing to cut anything. So I'm proud of that no vote, because I don't want to spend your money on that kind of stuff. And sooner or later, members of Congress have to make tough decisions, and I've made them.
You know, you do this long enough and you can kind of anticipate it. George, go ahead.
So I am all for being fiscally responsible, for making sure that we pay for the programs that we are supporting. But let's make sure we understand what's going on here. This tax cut was not a tax cut that our economy needed. Our economy was already growing. Tax cuts are a fiscal stimulus that are typically applied during periods of downward growth of the economy or contraction of the economy. Our economy was already growing. So all we've done is potentially introduce a risk of inflation that we will potentially have to deal with down the road. On top of that, these tax cuts were not distributed evenly. Okay? 83% of the benefits from the tax cuts went to the top 1% of our society. That's not who we are, folks. That's not the way the system's supposed to work. Millionaires and billionaires didn't need nor did they ask for those additional tax cuts. And the supposed growth that was going to happen from corporations, in fact, was used for stock buybacks and dividend issues to folks who, frankly, were already doing pretty well to start with. So we need to be honest with each other about this and to figure out a way to work together to solve this issue.